Dinner was supposed to feel like home. That is what I told myself as I walked into the dining room, still in my navy khakis, my shoulders stiff from hours on duty. My mom had gone all out. The table was set like a magazine cover, polished cutlery. Cloth napkins folded into neat triangles. A centerpiece of lilies she had probably bought just that afternoon. It was too perfect, too arranged. The shrimp scampi was steaming in the middle, the smell of garlic and butter filling every corner of the room. My mom looked up, smiled a little too wide, and said in her rehearsed cheerful tone, "Dinner's ready." I sat down, sliding into the chair that had been mine since childhood. Everything looked the same and yet not the same at all. My dad poured himself wine, paused, then looked at me. He had that expression he always carried when I wore the uniform, half pride, half discomfort. Like my choice to join the Navy had been both proof that I was capable and evidence that I had left them behind. My mom made sure my glass was different. No wine, no soda, just cranberry juice, no ice. Exactly how she used to serve it back when I was in high school. A detail meant to feel familiar, maybe comforting. Instead, it put a weight in my stomach. My younger sister sat across from me, her phone lying face up beside the plate. She kept glancing at the black screen as if her reflection mattered more than the people in the room. She was good at pretending not to care. She had always been good at that. The conversation began, the kind of hollow small talk that tries to sound like family warmth but fails under the surface. My dad launched into a rant about the homeowners association fining him for the wrong kind of mailbox flag. My mom chimed in about a neighbor who wore heels to walk her dog. My sister asked if I got Navy discounts on electronics. I nodded politely, gave short answers, tried to act like being here didn't twist something inside me. 10 minutes in, just as my dad was starting another story, my phone buzzed once in my lap. A single vibration. No ringtone, no notification sound, just a silent tremor against my thigh. At first I ignored it, out of respect, out of habit, but something in me tightened. A pressure in the back of my neck, the kind of feeling you get when the air in a room changes even though nothing looks different. I angled my phone under the table, just enough to read the screen. The number was unfamiliar, no name attached. The message was only 6 words. "Get up and leave, do not say anything." My fork froze halfway to my mouth. I blinked at the words, reading them again and again like my brain refused to accept them the first time. Get up. Leave. Silent. The room suddenly felt smaller, the ceiling lower, the air heavier. My mom was sipping wine, eyes fixed on my dad. My sister was tapping the corner of her phone, her face blank. My dad was talking, words spilling out about some man from church caught in an affair. None of them noticed that I wasn't breathing right. My pulse started to hammer. Who would send me something like that? My first thought was that it had to be a mistake, a wrong number, some prank by a sailor on base. But deep down, my instincts told me different. Years of drills, watches, late nights at sea had taught me to respect that gut feeling. This was not a prank. The glass of cranberry juice in front of me glowed red under the dining room light. My mother had made it look casual, like an act of care. Yet suddenly it looked deliberate, too deliberate. I forced myself to speak calmly. "Be right back," I said, pushing back from the table. "Restroom." My mom barely glanced at me. My dad muttered something about dessert. My sister did not lift her eyes from her phone. None of them stopped me. I walked upstairs with steady steps, every nerve on fire. The bathroom door closed softly. I locked it, sat down on the closed lid and stared at the phone again. The message was still there. No punctuation, no emojis, just raw command. Whoever sent it wanted me gone. Urgently, my fingers shook as I pressed call. 1 ring, 2, 3, then a click. A woman's voice, hushed but sharp. "Maria, are you still inside?" I froze. The voice was familiar. "Yes," I whispered. "Who is this?" It's Chief Line. The recognition was immediate, my division chief. She was the kind of leader who never wasted words. She should not have been calling me, not on a weekend, not like this. "Listen carefully," she said, her voice tight. "Do not eat or drink anything. Get out of there. Come back to base now." My chest constricted. "What? Why? Your account was flagged this morning." Someone tried to access it. Twice. The IP address came from that house. The house downstairs. My mouth went dry. "My bank account?" "Yes, and your backup email." The attempts were precise. Someone who knows your routines. I thought of the cranberry juice, the too perfect table. The way my sister had asked about Navy discounts like money was already on her mind. "Are you saying my family is doing this?" "I cannot explain over the phone. Trust me. Get out. Do not say goodbye, just walk." The line went dead. I sat there, gripping the phone, staring at the reflection in the mirror. The rank insignia on my chest was dull in the dim light, but my eyes were wide awake now. Downstairs, laughter echoed faintly, normal laughter, a family dinner soundtrack. Yet all I could think of was the 6 words on my screen. Get up and leave. I unlocked the bathroom door slowly. The hallway was quiet, the carpet soft under my boots. I descended the stairs, each step measured, my heart beat loud in my ears. My dad looked up mid-bite. Everything okay? Called in, I said, voice steady, duty alert. On a Saturday, he asked, frowning. Navy, I answered simply. I opened the front door. Take food with you, my mom called after me. I shut the door without replying. Outside, the air was colder than it should have been. The breeze carried the smell of the bay. I didn't walk to my car. Not yet. Instead, I crossed the yard, turned down the street, and kept going. 3 blocks later, I finally pulled out my phone. One word, out, I hit send. No response came back, that was fine. My legs kept moving, faster now, as if the distance itself could save me. Whatever I thought this dinner was supposed to be, it was not family. It was not comfort. It was a setup. And the Navy had known before I did. I reached a gas station 2 streets away, the kind of place that always looked half abandoned. A rusted fence, a flickering light above the vending machines, and a bus stop no one ever really used. I stood there, catching my breath, pulling my Navy cap from my pocket and sliding it on. It wasn't regulation with my khakis, but I needed to disappear into the night to look like a passerby instead of someone unraveling. My phone buzzed again. A different number this time, still unknown. The message was shorter, colder. Check your bank alerts. Then delete this text. I opened the banking app. The loading wheel spun far too long, making every second heavier. Finally, the screen cleared. 2 attempted logins. One at 11:48 a.m., another at 4:13 p.m., both denied. Both traced to the same IP. Both flagged by the security protocol I had set months ago when paranoia pushed me to add extra layers. But the recovery email had been changed. Whoever tried knew what they were doing. They wanted to reroute my access completely. I stared across the lot. A family was loading groceries into a van, laughing, arguing about snacks. Normal life. Untouched life. It made my chest ache because I used to think my family was normal too, flawed but intact. Now I couldn't ignore the truth. Someone inside that dinner table had just tried to strip me of everything. I deleted the message and called a ride back to base. The gates loomed like a sanctuary when I arrived. The guards recognized me instantly. I nodded, flashed my ID, and walked through without a word. I didn't want to explain, not yet. The barracks smelled faintly of detergent and metal, familiar and grounding. I walked straight to Chief Line's office and knocked. She opened fast, wearing sweats instead of uniform, her hair pulled back tight. She looked like she hadn't slept. You made it, she said. Come in. I stepped inside. She closed the door and locked it. My throat was tight, but I forced the words out. Chief, what the hell is going on? She leaned against her desk. Do you want the short version or the long one? I want the truth. She nodded. Yesterday, someone flagged suspicious activity on your Navy federal account. It wasn't routine. It was precise, sophisticated. They almost got through if it wasn't for the encryption layers you added. My stomach dropped. The 2-factor chain, I whispered. Exactly. That chain triggered alerts. It bounced through the proxy and reached me because you listed me as your fallback contact last year. I remembered filling out the form during a rushed update session, writing her name because it seemed safer than listing family or anyone else. No drama, no strings, just trust in her steadiness. The IP address, she continued, came straight from your parents' house. Not a neighbor, not the wrong street, that house. The words landed like blows. 2 hours later, she said, someone tried to recover your backup email. Same pattern, same house. I sat down, my knees heavy. So what were they trying to do? Steal your money, maybe worse. Identity fraud, power of attorney access. Hard to know until we dig deeper. My mind flashed back to the glass of cranberry juice, my mother's too bright smile, my sister's eyes never meeting mine. They poured me juice, I whispered, just like always. Chief Line's eyes narrowed. You didn't drink it, did you? No. Don't underestimate how far people will go when they feel entitled to what you've earned, she said sharply. It hit me then like ice spreading through my veins. The juice had been a trap. They knew I never touched alcohol. They knew cranberry juice was the only thing I would drink. They had staged it perfectly. If I had sipped it, maybe I would have blacked out right there at the table. Maybe they would have smiled and held my hand, pretending to comfort me while unlocking my phone with my thumb. Maybe they would have drained my accounts in real time, then sat back down to finish dinner like nothing had happened. They made it look like family, I said. Exactly, Chief Line answered. That's how manipulation works. They disguise theft as tradition, guilt as bonding. I gripped the edge of the chair. My mom's fake smile, my sister's distracted screen. My dad's stories to keep me distracted. It wasn't family, it was choreography. I don't want this swept under the rug, I said. Good, because neither do I. She handed me a notepad and a pen. Start writing everything. Times, dates, what was said. Even the menu, every detail matters. I began writing, my hands moving faster than my mind could process. Shrimp scampi, cranberry juice, Dad talking about church, Mom laughing too loud, my sister asking about discounts, my phone buzzing at exactly 7:14 p.m. Chief line paced, making calls, pulling up logs, her voice low but sharp. She had always been calm during drills, unshakable during inspections. Tonight she was sharper than ever, and that steadiness anchored me. She asked if I had ever given them access to my phone before. No. Shared passwords? Never. Did they know about my biometric login? Probably. Everyone knew phones had it now. And they still poured you a glass, she said quietly. I swallowed hard. Yes, that silence pressed in heavy. The realization that my family had coordinated against me, using details only they knew, left a hollow ache in my chest. Chief, I said finally, what happens now? Now we play it smart. We don't tell them what we know. We wait, we build the case. You have the upper hand now. Don't waste it. She was right. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't going to just endure. I wasn't going to excuse their behavior, call it love, pretend it was normal. I looked at the pages I had written, the ink pressed deep into the paper. Then I looked up and said the words that sealed it. Let's go on record. Chief Line nodded, her eyes sharp. Now you're thinking like a sailor. The next morning I woke before dawn, long before the base came alive. My room inside the barracks was quiet except for the faint hum of the air system and the rustle of my own breathing. I had not really slept. My dreams had been a tangle of voices from the dining table, whispers in the dark, the glow of a phone screen. I sat on the edge of my bunk, staring at my boots lined neatly on the floor, wondering how much of my life had just cracked open without me realizing it. The knock came at 600 sharp. Chief Line never wasted time. She stepped inside, holding a manila folder tucked under her arm. No uniform, just a hoodie and jeans, but her presence filled the room with the same authority she carried on deck. We traced the attempts, she said without greeting. It's not speculation anymore. Both signals rooted from your parents, Wi-Fi, no question. The words should not have surprised me, yet they did. I gripped the frame of my bed as if holding myself in place. Chief handed me the folder. Inside were printouts. Timestamps, IP addresses, flagged login attempts, geolocation data pinned like arrows pointing straight at the house where I had eaten dinner less than 12 hours ago. It is clean evidence, she continued. And it was not a single accident. They tried more than once. I stared at the pages. My mom's careful cooking, my dad's stories, my sister's restless screen tapping, all ordinary on the surface. And yet these numbers on paper made it undeniable. I heard myself ask the question anyway. Could it have been someone nearby? A neighbor? A stolen signal? Chief shook her head. No bleed, no piggybacking, too precise. Whoever it was had the password. The ache behind my eyes sharpened. My family's network had been locked with the same code since I was a teenager. A simple combination based on my birthday. They had never changed it. Of course they hadn't. I felt the shame burn hot in my throat. I had given them the key years ago without thinking, and now it was being used against me. Chief folded her arms. Do you understand what this means? I nodded slowly, but my voice felt thin. It means it was not a stranger. She watched me closely. You need to be prepared. Once we open this officially, you can't walk it back. The weight of those words pressed on me. For years I had told myself to forgive, that my family's demands were just love wrapped in the wrong language. That their guilt trips, their endless requests for money, were simply a parent's way of leaning on their child. But this was no misunderstanding. This was a calculated intrusion. I wanted to scream. Instead, I asked, what if they say it was an accident? They will, Chief said evenly. That is why we don't let this become a story about misunderstanding. We let the evidence speak. I closed the folder and held it tight against my chest, as if the paper itself could protect me. Chief leaned forward, her voice low. You have to remember, Maria, people closest to you know your patterns best. That is what makes them dangerous when they decide to turn. Her words sank like stones. My family knew everything about me, what food I liked, what time I usually called, even the shape of my thumbprint. My thumb, the biometric lock on my phone. Suddenly the cranberry juice appeared in my mind again, glowing red in the dining room light. My hand wrapped around the glass. My thumb pressing against the smooth curve. If I had passed out, if my phone had been lying next to me, it would have taken them less than a second to press my finger onto the screen and unlock everything. The thought made my stomach twist. Chief must have seen the color drain from my face. What? she asked. They poured me cranberry juice, I whispered. The one thing they knew I would drink. Her eyes narrowed. Did you touch it? No. Then you're alive because of instinct, she said. Do not underestimate that. For a moment the silence between us was heavy with unspoken things. My chest rose and fell too fast. Chief finally straightened, her tone clipped. We will set a meeting with Jag. You are not alone in this. I nodded, but my mind was already spiraling somewhere else. My sister's eyes had flicked up once during dinner, just once, when my dad was laughing too hard at his own story. There had been a sharpness in her look, a calculation she had quickly masked. I had brushed it off. Now it replayed in my head like a warning I had ignored. Could she really have been the one? The idea unsettled me more than anything. My parents had always been demanding, manipulative, but my sister, I had defended her more times than I could count. When teachers called home, when money was short, when she failed her classes and needed a ride, I had been her shield. The thought that she might have been the one pressing keys on a laptop upstairs while I sat at the dinner table downstairs felt like a knife twisting inside me. I wanted to believe it was all of them or none of them. Anything but her. Chief's phone buzzed. She checked it quickly and said, "They are texting you again, aren't they?" I hesitated, then pulled out my phone. A new message sat waiting. You left too early. We weren't finished. The words were simple, but they hit harder than the first warning text. There was no smile in them, no warmth, just accusation. Chief read over my shoulder. That's not a parent. That's a thief angry the job didn't finish. My hands trembled. My family had noticed. My departure had not gone unnoticed, not at all. For the first time in my life, I was no longer their daughter at a dinner table. I was their target. The day dragged on like wet cloth, heavy and slow. I went through my drills at the base, answered the calls I was supposed to, filed the reports expected of me, but none of it felt real. Every time I looked at my phone, I half expected to see another message. By noon, I had 6. Where did you go last night? We were worried. You didn't even say goodbye. Family deserves respect. Do you think you're too good for us now? We need to talk. The words shifted from soft to sharp, as if someone couldn't decide whether to lure me back with affection or drag me with guilt. The mix was familiar. It was the same pattern my family had used for years, long before I put on the uniform. Chief told me to save every single one. Screenshots, timestamps, backup. She said the more we have, the harder it is for them to twist the story later. So I did. Each message felt like acid, but I collected them anyway. Evidence was safer than denial. By late afternoon, I sat in the small office of a judge advocate general officer, a lieutenant with tired eyes and a stack of files taller than his elbow. He listened without interrupting as I explained the dinner, the cranberry juice, the warning text, the IP address. When I finished, he tapped his pen against the desk 3 times before speaking. You understand what you're implying, Petty Officer Gilbert? I do, sir. That your own family attempted financial theft and possibly something more. Yes, he exhaled slowly, leaning back in his chair. This will not be simple. Family cases never are, but the evidence from your chief is strong. Very strong. If you're willing to proceed, we can open an investigation. I wanted to ask what possibly something more meant, but the words stuck in my throat. I already knew. The juice. The glass. The way my sister had slid it in front of me with a smile so casual it almost looked sweet. I said only, I'm willing. Good. Then start writing every memory you have of their demands. Money, accounts. Anytime they pressured you to sign papers, share passwords, wire funds, dates, amounts, details. It felt like putting my entire childhood and early adulthood under a microscope, but I nodded. I had spent years carrying those moments quietly, excusing them as family quirks. Now they were becoming ammunition. When I left his office, the sky was already dark. The streetlights on base glowed yellow against the pavement. I walked alone, my steps echoing, and for the first time I felt the full distance between myself and the people I used to call home. Back in my room, I sat at the desk and began to write. The first time they asked me to cover a bill. The first time my mom cried on the phone about overdue rent while I was still in boot camp. The way my dad casually mentioned loans in your name would have better rates. My sister texting at 2 a.m. asking for my password to buy clothes online. Each entry another cut on paper, another piece of proof that none of this had started last night. It had been building for years, slow and quiet, until it erupted into that perfect dinner staged like a trap. At 2200, my phone buzzed again. This time, the message was not from my parents' shared number. It came from my sister's personal line. You don't understand. They need help. I'm the only one keeping this family together. You can't just walk away. I stared at the words until they blurred. Then another came. Don't make me the villain. The screen glowed in my hand. Villain. She chose that word herself as if she knew what role she was already playing. My chest tightened. Was it her all along? Was she the one sitting upstairs with a laptop while I chewed shrimp scampi? Did she look at me across the table, pretending to be bored, while code ran under her fingers? The thought made my stomach churn. I did not answer her. Instead, I saved the messages, dropped the phone face down, and pressed my palms hard against my eyes until spots of light danced behind my eyelids. Chief's words echoed again. People closest to you know your patterns best. The next morning, I filed the messages as evidence. The JAG officer read them carefully, his jaw tightening. This shows intent. Manipulation, keep going, so I kept going. I wrote more, remembered more, dug deeper. Every detail felt like reopening a wound I had stitched shut years ago, but the more I wrote, the clearer it became. None of this had been random. They had been circling me for years. That night, another message arrived, short and sharp. You owe us. 3 words, nothing more, but they carried the full weight of everything I had been running from. I read it once, twice, then shut my phone off. My hands were shaking, but my voice was steady when I whispered into the empty room. No, I don't. For the first time, the word felt like a weapon. The week after that dinner blurred into a strange rhythm of duty and secrecy. By day, I carried out my tasks like nothing had changed. I trained with my unit, attended briefings, checked equipment, and saluted my officers with steady eyes. On the surface, I was the same petty Officer Gilbert I had always been. But underneath, a second life was unfolding. A life measured in evidence folders, hidden texts, and whispered meetings behind closed doors. Chief Line was relentless. Every morning she checked in. Every evening she wanted updates. She pushed me to record not just the new messages, but the old memories, the patterns, the ways my family had used guilt and obligation as weapons. I filled pages with moments I had once buried. The late-night calls begging for money. The times my mom hinted she could not afford groceries unless I pitched in. The way my dad joked that I owed them for raising me. My sister's endless requests for passwords, for rides, for things she claimed she needed right now. Writing it all down made me feel both lighter and heavier at once. Lighter because I no longer had to pretend it was love. Heavier because now it looked like evidence of a crime. The JAG officer reviewed everything carefully. He had the patience of a man who had seen too many ugly truths hidden under the word family. Each time I handed him new pages, he asked the same question. Do you want to continue? Each time I answered the same way. Yes, but the deeper we went, the harder it became to silence the echo in my chest. The question I never wanted to ask out loud. Was my sister the one pulling all the strings? It seemed impossible. Yet the more I thought about it, the more details lined up. She was the one always glued to her phone. The one who asked about discounts right before my account was attacked. The one who poured me that glass of juice with a smile too smooth to be casual. My parents had always been clumsy in their demands, transparent in their guilt. But my sister, she was sharper, quieter, more calculating. Still, I did not want to believe it. I told myself maybe she was only following my parents' lead, trying to please them. Maybe she was just another pawn. But deep down, the memory of her text burned. Don't make me the villain. One night after lights out in the barracks, I sat at my desk with the glow of my lamp casting long shadows across the walls. I opened my laptop and scrolled through the security logs Chief had given me. I stared at the timestamps, at the pattern of the login attempts. Each one lined up with hours I remembered sitting at that dinner table or the moments I had stepped into the bathroom. The timing was too sharp to be coincidence. It felt like someone had been watching me, waiting for the exact moment my attention slipped. I leaned back in my chair, the ceiling fan whirring softly overhead. A thought rose unbidden, sharp, and cruel. Maybe they had been planning this for weeks. Maybe the dinner wasn't a sudden idea. Maybe it was a performance they had rehearsed, each role carefully chosen, each line spoken to distract me. And if that was true, then my sister hadn't been bored at all. She had been calculating, waiting, pretending indifference while running the whole show. The realization left me cold. The next day, Chief and I sat together in the mess hall during the quiet lull between meals. She slid her coffee across the table and asked, "What are you holding back?" I hesitated. She didn't let me. "Spit it out, Gilbert." I lowered my voice. "My sister. I think she might be the one." Chief's expression didn't change, but her eyes sharpened. Why? I told her everything. The text. The timing. The way she poured the juice. The look in her eyes across the table. When I finished, Chief was silent for a long time. Finally, she said, "That tracks." The bluntness hit me harder than denial would have. "You need to prepare yourself," she continued. This isn't going to get easier. Once the truth comes out, it will hurt worse than you expect. I swallowed hard. It already hurts. No, she said, not yet. That night another message arrived, this time longer. You're making a mistake. You think the Navy can protect you, but they won't always be there. We're your family. You'll come back eventually. I read it in the dark, the glow of the screen painting my face pale. The tone was unmistakable. It wasn't pleading. It was possession. I forwarded it straight to Chief and the JAG officer. No hesitation. Still, as I lay down, staring at the ceiling, I felt something hollow open inside me. If my sister truly was the one, then everything I had believed about blood, about loyalty, was crumbling. And yet, beneath the ache, a new resolve stirred. They wanted me weak, pliable, easy to use. Instead, they had made me sharper, stronger. If my sister thought she could turn me into a victim, she had no idea who I had become. The messages did not stop. They came like tides, pulling back just long enough for me to breathe, then crashing harder the next time. By the third day, I had more than 24, each written with a different voice, as though the sender was testing which version of family could pull me back in. We love you, Maria. Come home. You embarrassed us in front of our neighbors. Don't forget who raised you. Family sacrifices deserve repayment. If you cared, you'd help us. Stop listening to strangers who don't know us. I read each one in silence, letting the words coat me like ash, then saving them carefully into the evidence folder Chief had ordered me to keep. Some of them tried to sound soft, almost tender, but the tenderness was false. Others were sharp, angry, accusing, dripping with guilt. Together, they painted a picture clearer than any confession. I was not a daughter to them anymore. I was a resource slipping out of reach. That night, close to midnight, the rhythm changed. Instead of another text, my phone lit up with a call. My sister's name glared across the screen. My first instinct was to let it die unanswered, but it rang again and again, as though she had no intention of stopping. On the third attempt, I pressed the green button, raising the phone slowly to my ear. Her voice spilled through immediately, soft and warm, like we were still children sharing secrets in the dark. Maria, finally, please don't hang up. I said nothing. She filled the silence, words pouring fast. You don't understand what's happening. Mom's been crying every night. Dad's furious, but he doesn't mean it. We just wanted to celebrate you. That's why we made dinner. That's all it was. Her tone was gentle, almost believable, but something inside me stayed rigid. I remembered the folder of timestamps. I remembered the juice. I remembered the way she had looked at me across the table, distracted but not really distracted. I kept my silence. Her tone shifted, frustration sliding under the surface. You walked out like we were strangers. Do you know what the neighbors are saying? That we can't even keep our own daughter at the table. Do you want them to think we're broken? Still, I gave her nothing. The sweetness dropped away completely. Her voice sharpened like glass. You think the Navy will always protect you? You're wrong. The second you stop being useful, they'll throw you out. We never would. A lie. A venomous, deliberate lie. My hand tightened around the phone. She wasn't trying to comfort me. She was trying to control me. I cut the line without a word. For several minutes, the room was silent, but for the roar of my own breathing. Then the phone buzzed again. This time it was a message, 6 words that glowed in the dark like a brand. You will regret this, Maria. Always. The chill ran so deep I couldn't move. Not a plea, not even a demand, a threat. I saved it, forwarded it to Chief, then turned the phone face down on the desk. My hands shook, but my voice was steady when I whispered into the empty air. That's evidence. That's all it is. The next morning, the JAG officer studied the printout with tight lips. This isn't just attempted theft now, he said. This is intimidation. That changes everything. I nodded, though my stomach churned. He leaned forward, eyes searching mine. Maria, do you understand what this means if we proceed? This could go to open court. You may have to testify. You may have to face them directly. The words hit harder than I expected. I imagined standing in front of a judge, pointing to my mother, my father, my sister, saying they betrayed me, saying they plotted to strip me of everything. The idea left me hollow. But then my sister's voice replayed in my head, cold and sharp. You will regret this. I clenched my fists until my nails bit into my palms. Yes, sir, I understand. And I will proceed. That night I tried to sleep, but the images wouldn't leave me. My sister's face across the dinner table, her fingers sliding the cranberry juice toward me, her eyes flicking up just once, too sharp, too calculating. I had told myself she was distracted, bored, but what if that had been a mask? What if she had been watching, waiting, while code ran upstairs or in her pocket, timed to the exact moment I stepped away? At 2 a.m, another message arrived. You can't run from us. I laughed bitterly, though no sound came out, because I already had. The following day, Chief called me into her office. The folder was thicker now, full of logs and printouts. She opened it on her desk and tapped one page with a fingernail. Look at this. It was the second login attempt. The timestamp, 1914 hours. 7:14 p.m. My breath caught. That was the exact minute I had locked myself in the upstairs bathroom. Chief's voice was calm but sharp. Whoever was at that table was waiting for you to move. The image replayed again and again. My father telling a story too loudly. My mother laughing too brightly. My sister, head bowed, fingers scrolling, eyes sharp in that one fleeting second. I pressed my hands flat against the desk to steady them, but the truth surged like fire inside me. It wasn't all of them. It was her. And though I wasn't ready to say it out loud, I finally allowed myself to believe it. The stack of paperwork on my desk was beginning to look less like protection and more like a mountain I would never climb. Every sheet carried a memory I had once tucked away and tried to forget. Now they stared back at me in black ink, ugly truths laid bare under fluorescent light. Chief Line said the documentation was necessary. Evidence is power, Maria. You can't afford to rely on your word alone. She was right, of course. She was always right. But it didn't make it easier to watch my childhood dissolve into reports and exhibits. The JAG officer wanted details, not just about the dinner or the messages, but about the years before, the history that showed this wasn't sudden. He pushed me to dig deeper, and I did. I wrote about the endless times my mom called me in tears, asking for money, just until the end of the month. I wrote about the way my dad cushed his demands in jokes, little stabs wrapped in laughter. I wrote about my sister asking me for my Netflix password, then my email login, then just a small favor with my debit card. Individually, they had seemed harmless or at least forgivable. Together, laid out on paper, they looked like a pattern, a script they had been perfecting for years, and now the act had reached its climax. Still, I hesitated every time I reached the part about my sister. My parents I could frame as manipulative, even greedy, and it fit. But her. I had defended her too many times. If she truly was the one orchestrating everything, then the sister I thought I had never really existed. Chief saw that hesitation. One evening she cornered me in her office. The blinds were closed, the air stale with the smell of burnt coffee. "You're holding back," she said. I kept my eyes on the folder in my lap. "I'm just tired." "No, you're afraid." I finally looked up. Afraid of what? Her gaze didn't soften. "Afraid that the truth will ruin whatever story you've been telling yourself about your sister." Her words cut straight through me, because she was right. I had built a story around my sister, one where she was helpless, where I was the protector, the shield. If that story crumbled, then who was I? I didn't answer. Chief didn't press. She didn't need to. That night, as if she had been listening through the walls, my sister sent another message. "If you report this, you'll destroy us. Do you really want that guilt?" The words tightened around my chest. The us struck me hardest. It was them. It was Mom and Dad. It was us, as though she was planting herself at the center, speaking for everyone, as though the fate of the entire family lived in her hands. I didn't reply. Instead, I printed it, slid it into the folder, and tried to ignore the sting in my chest. The following day, the JAG officer arranged a monitored call. Not a confrontation, not yet, just a test, a chance to hear how my parents spoke when they thought no one else was listening. I agreed, though my stomach churned at the thought of hearing their voices. The room was small, bare except for the table and the recorder. Chief sat beside me, silent but solid, her presence like armor. The officer dialed the number, and after 2 rings, my mother's voice filled the speaker. "Maria," she exclaimed, too bright, too rehearsed. "Finally, we've been so worried." I forced my voice calm. "I've been busy. Duty doesn't wait." My father's voice cut in, heavy and annoyed. "You didn't have to leave like that. You embarrassed us. Do you know what the neighbors are saying? Always the neighbors. Their reputation had always meant more than my well-being." In the background, faint but sharp, I heard my sister. "Tell her to stop." The words were low, hurried, but the microphone caught them. "Tell her to stop. Not please come home. Not we love you. Just stop," like I was an enemy force to be shut down. My mother hushed her quickly, as if she hadn't spoken at all, then filled the silence with another performance of worry and sweetness. But I couldn't unhear it. I looked at Chief. Her face was unreadable, but her eyes told me everything. We both knew what that single line meant. The call dragged another 10 minutes. My parents alternated between coaxing and complaining. My father tried jokes that landed heavy. My mother shifted between guilt and praise. My sister stayed quiet, but her silence screamed louder than their words. When the line finally disconnected, I felt like I had run a marathon with weights on my chest. Chief rested her hand on the growing folder. "They're tightening their grip." But so are we. I nodded, though the ache in my chest made it hard to breathe. That evening, after filing the transcript, I walked to the fence at the edge of the base. The sea stretched dark and endless, the moon scattering silver across its skin. I stood there until the cold bit through my jacket, trying to make sense of the people I had once believed in. I remembered being 12, holding my sister's hand as we crossed the street. I remembered lending her my jacket on a freezing night. I remembered staying up late, helping her with homework while she doodled in the margins. Those memories had been proof of love, of family. Now they felt like relics from a different life, souvenirs from a bond that maybe had never been real. My phone vibrated. Another message. You think evidence makes you safe. It won't. I stared at the screen until the letters blurred. Then, slowly, something shifted inside me. The fear that had clung to me for days loosened. What replaced it was anger. Sharp, steady, unflinching, because they were wrong. Evidence did make me safe. Evidence gave me power. And I was finally ready to use it. The pressure didn't ease after the monitored call. If anything, it grew heavier, pressing down on me from every direction. Each time my phone buzzed, my body tensed. Every vibration felt like a hook thrown into my chest, trying to reel me back toward them. The texts were endless, each one carrying a different mask. We just want to talk. You've changed since the Navy. You're colder now. Why are you punishing us? Don't forget the roof we gave you, the food you ate. A daughter should never turn her back. Sometimes the words were drenched in guilt, heavy with memories of childhood they thought could still hold me hostage. Other times the words were sharp, almost cruel, accusing me of betrayal. I saved them all, every single one, dragging them into the growing evidence folder, even when my hands trembled. Then came the voicemails. The first was my father's voice, rough with frustration. You think you made yourself, Maria? Don't be foolish. Everything you have came from us. Your discipline, your drive, you got that from me. You owe me for every hour I worked to put food on the table. The second was my mother's, soaked in tears. Baby, you're breaking my heart. You know I don't sleep when you're upset with me. Do you want that on your conscience? Do you want me sick because of you? Just come home and we'll forget all of this. The third was my sister. Her tone wasn't pleading. It was measured, deliberate. Maria, this is bigger than you. You need to stop before it gets worse. I listened to all three in silence, my body rigid, the phone pressed so hard to my ear it left a mark. 3 different weapons, all aimed at me. Guilt, obligation, threat. The next morning, Chief and I sat together in her office while the recordings played again on speaker. She didn't comment on my father's bluster or my mother's crying, but when my sister's voice filled the room, she leaned forward, her jaw tightening. Do you hear it? She asked. Hear what? Control. That wasn't begging. That was a directive. She thinks she's in charge. Her words struck me harder than I expected, because deep down I had heard it too. That evening after duty, I walked past the mess hall where sailors swapped stories about their families. Their laughter echoed in the corridor, light, easy, unburdened. They joked about Christmas disasters, sibling fights over toys, burned turkey dinners. I smiled when they noticed me, pretending to share the warmth, but inside I felt the hollowness stretch wide. They spoke of families that fought but still loved. Mine was a battlefield dressed as a dinner table. Later, in the silence of my room, I let myself ask the question I had been avoiding. What if I walked away completely, not just through paperwork or legal distance, but truly forever? No calls, no holidays, no birthdays, nothing. The thought scared me. The word orphan pulsed in my head, even though my parents were alive. But the more I sat with it, the more I realized I already was an orphan in everything that mattered. At 1 a.m., the phone lit up again. A new message, this time from my sister's personal number. You think you're safe in uniform. You're not. I read it once, then again. The bluntness of it made my stomach turn. For a moment, I almost replied, demanding answers, demanding clarity. But then I remembered Chief's warning, don't engage. Engagement was what they wanted. Silence was power. I saved the message and sent it to Chief. Her reply came almost instantly. Perfect. That's another brick in the wall. Keep building it. She was right. It was no longer just an evidence folder. It was a wall, thick and solid, separating who I had been from who I was becoming. 2 days later, the JAG officer called me in. He slid the folder across the desk, now heavy with screenshots, transcripts, printouts, voicemails. He tapped it once, his eyes steady on mine. You've built a strong case. I waited, heart pounding. We're ready for the next step, he said. I asked what that meant, though my body already knew, direct confrontation. The words sent a chill through me, but also a strange sense of relief. No more shadows, no more screens or voicemails. A real room, real voices, no hiding. He must have seen the conflict on my face because his tone softened. You won't be alone. We'll set the terms, you'll have protection, but they need to see that you're not afraid. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the fan spinning slowly above me, and imagined the moment to come. Would my parents look ashamed? Would they keep acting, clinging to their script of worry and disappointment? And my sister, would she finally drop the mask? The fear curled tight in my chest, but under it burned something sharper. Anger, defiance. I had spent years bending, excusing, forgiving. Now I felt the weight of every screenshot, every recording, every note. Evidence had become my armor. I walked to the fence at the edge of base, where the sea stretched dark and infinite. The moon carved silver paths across the waves, indifferent to my turmoil. I stood there with the cold air biting my face and whispered to no one, "I'm ready." The words felt different this time. They didn't erase the fear, but they gave it shape. Fear I could face, fear I could carry. When I returned to my room, the phone lit up again. One more message, plain and final. "You'll regret choosing them over us." I didn't flinch. I saved it, slid the folder closed, and placed it on my desk. My family thought they were tightening a trap. What they didn't see was that every word, every attempt at control, was sharpening me instead. The confrontation was coming. And when it did, I would be the one holding the truth. The day of the confrontation arrived with skies the color of steel. I woke before my alarm, my body alert in a way that felt like deployment, like stepping onto foreign soil. Except this battlefield wasn't across an ocean. It was waiting inside a small conference room on base. I dressed slowly, buttoning my khakis with deliberate precision, every crease sharp. Uniforms had always been armor for me, but today it felt heavier than usual. The insignia on my chest reminded me of everything I had built on my own, everything they had never touched. Chief met me outside the building. Her stance was steady, arms folded behind her back, but her eyes softened when she looked at me. "You don't have to prove anything, Maria. Just tell the truth." I nodded. The truth. That was what had brought me here. The JAG officer ushered me inside. The room was small, plain, with a long table dividing it. On one side sat 3 chairs for my family. On the other side, 2 for me and Chief. A recorder sat in the middle, its red light waiting. I took my seat, my back straight, my palms pressed against the cool surface of the table. Moments later, the door opened and my parents walked in, followed by my sister. My mother looked fragile, her eyes red-rimmed as if she had spent the night rehearsing sorrow. My father's jaw was set hard, his shoulders broad with stubborn pride. My sister walked in last, her phone in hand, her expression unreadable. The sight of them made my chest ache, but I didn't let it show. The officer began with a calm explanation. "This is a monitored discussion. It is being recorded. You are to speak respectfully. The purpose is clarity." My father scoffed under his breath but said nothing more. Then the questions began. "Why did you attempt to access Maria's accounts?" My mother leaned forward, her voice trembling. "We didn't," she said quickly. "This is all a misunderstanding. We only wanted to check on her, make sure she was okay." Chief's eyes flicked toward me, a silent reminder, "Stay steady." I spoke slowly. "Then why were their login attempts traced directly to this address?" My father slammed his palm against the table. "You think you know everything because of your Navy gadgets. Maybe it was a neighbor stealing Wi-Fi. Maybe your system got it wrong." I kept my voice even. "Both attempts happened during dinner. At your house." Silence stretched across the table. My mother's tears welled. My father clenched his fists. My sister finally looked up from her phone, her eyes locking on mine with a cool sharpness that made my stomach twist. She spoke for the first time, her voice calm. "You're paranoid." The words cut deeper than a shout. I didn't flinch. "If I'm paranoid, then why did you pour me juice?" Exactly the way I drank it as a teenager. My mother's hands shook. "Because we love you. We wanted you to feel at home." Chief leaned forward. "Or because you knew it was the one drink she would accept without question." My sister rolled her eyes, a gesture too practiced to be careless. "This is ridiculous. We're being accused of crimes because Maria doesn't trust her own blood." Her tone was smooth, dismissive, but my pulse hammered. I remembered the voicemails, the texts, her single sharp command in the background of the last call. "Tell her to stop." The officer slid the printed transcripts across the table. "These are your words. Do you deny sending them?" My mother looked confused. My father looked enraged. But my sister didn't even glance at the papers. She just sat there, her expression unreadable, as if she had already moved beyond denial. The air in the room thickened. I realized then that this wasn't just about evidence anymore. This was about who I chose to believe, the rehearsed tears, the angry pride, or the cold silence of the sister who had always hidden behind her screen. For the first time, I let the anger in me surface. I leaned forward, my voice steady but sharp. I know what you tried to do, and I won't let you take anything else from me. My sister tilted her head, the corner of her mouth curling, not in guilt, not in shame, but in something closer to amusement. And for a moment, I saw the truth flicker behind her eyes. The silence after my words seemed to stretch forever. I could hear the faint buzz of the fluorescent light above, the ticking of the recorder on the table, even my own breathing. Across from me, 3 faces wore 3 masks. My mother was sorrow, tears balanced perfectly on the edge of her lashes. My father's was rage, his jaw clenching so tightly I thought his teeth might crack. And my sister's was stillness. Calm, a stillness too sharp to be innocence. The JAG officer broke the silence. These transcripts don't lie. We have timestamps. We have IP matches. We have your words. My mother dabbed her eyes with a tissue. It wasn't what it looks like. We were desperate. You don't know what it's like to struggle. I held her gaze. I know what it's like to sacrifice. I've done it every day since I enlisted. My father leaned forward, his voice rough. Everything you have, Maria, we gave you. How dare you turn on us? Chief spoke before I could. No one gave her what she has. She earned it. You tried to take it. That struck a nerve. My father slammed his fist on the table, but the officer raised a hand, his voice firm. Enough. Then my sister finally spoke. Her voice was quiet, steady, almost bored. Do you really think this case will hold? Her words froze me. Not because of what she said, but how she said it, like she wasn't afraid, like she was certain of her own intelligence. Chief tilted her head. What exactly do you mean by that? My sister's eyes flicked toward her, then back to me. Maria knows. She's not stupid. She's just pretending she doesn't see it. My throat tightened. Pretending I didn't see what? The corner of her mouth curled into a smile, small and sharp. You always protected me. Covered for me, told Mom and Dad I'd grow out of my mistakes. But you never realized I was already ahead of you. My stomach dropped. My mother gasped, her tissue falling to the table. My father muttered something under his breath, confusion flickering across his features. Chief's voice was like steel. So it was you. My sister shrugged, her calm expression never wavering. Who else? Mom can barely check her email. Dad doesn't know how to copy and paste. It was me, always me. The room tilted. Every suspicion I had buried, every glance across the dinner table, every sharp flicker in her eyes, it all came crashing together. I remembered the cranberry juice. Her hand sliding the glass toward me with a smile too casual to be real. Her command in the background of the call, tell her to stop. The midnight messages, the threats. My chest felt hollow, like something inside me had cracked wide open. My father finally spoke, his voice breaking. You dragged us into this. She turned to him, unflinching. You wanted money, didn't you? You wanted comfort. I was just smart enough to make it happen. My mother shook her head, whispering no over and over as though denial could erase the truth. Chief's eyes never left my sister. Do you realize what you've admitted? My sister leaned back in her chair, her smile thin. You think you can protect her forever? She belongs to us. She always will. The words hit me like a slap, but something inside me snapped back harder. I straightened, my voice cutting through the air like a blade. No, I don't. Her smile faltered for the first time. I stood, placing both hands flat on the table, leaning forward so my words landed directly between us. I don't belong to you. I don't belong to anyone. The recorder caught everything, the evidence, the threats, the confession. But in that moment, I didn't care about the machine on the table. I cared about the truth finally leaving my mouth. My sister's eyes narrowed, her mask slipping, rage flickering across her features. But it was too late. The room was no longer hers. Chief placed a steady hand on my shoulder. That's enough. The officer gathered the papers, his voice final. This session is over. Guards appeared at the door. My parents looked stunned, broken by the realization that the daughter they thought they could control had slipped out of their grasp. My sister's smile returned, thin and venomous, as she rose from her chair. This isn't over. I met her gaze without blinking. For me, it is. She looked away first. As they were escorted out, the weight that had pressed on my chest for years seemed to lift. Not completely, the scars would remain, but enough for me to breathe freely again. I sat back down, my hands trembling with adrenaline. Chief squeezed my shoulder once, firm and grounding. You did it. I nodded, the words catching in my throat. For the first time, I believed it. The room was empty again. The long table sat between me and silence, the red light on the recorder finally dark. For the first time in weeks, the buzzing in my ears faded. The voices, the guilt, the threats, they were gone. But the quiet wasn't comfort, it was a void. I sat there long after my family had been escorted out, staring at the chair my sister had occupied. The outline of her body still lingered in my mind, her sharp smile etched into the air. Her words echoed, heavy as chains. You think you can protect her forever. She belongs to us. I rubbed my temples until my skin burned, as if pressure alone could scrub the memory away. Chief broke the silence first. "You should go rest." I shook my head. "If I lie down now, I'll see their faces." She didn't argue. Instead, she handed me a bottle of water, her eyes steady on mine. "You face them. That's more than most people ever manage." I wanted to believe her, but the hollow in my chest only deepened. The JAG officer returned a few minutes later, his arms full of files. He set them down with a thud. "You gave us more than enough. The confession, the threats, the digital trail. This will move forward, move forward." The phrase sounded clean, bureaucratic, neat, but my family wasn't paperwork, they were blood. They were the people who had tucked me into bed, who had packed my school lunches, who had laughed at birthday candles. And now they were suspects, defendants, liars. I asked the question that had been burning on my tongue. What happens to them now? The officer paused, choosing his words carefully. "There will be investigations, legal proceedings, protective measures for you. Beyond that, it depends. Two words that could mean 1,000 futures. Jail, fines, or maybe just more resentment festering on the other side of a courtroom." Chief must have read the storm on my face because she leaned in, her voice low. "Their choices are not your burden anymore." I wanted to believe her. But wasn't that what family was supposed to be? A burden shared, not abandoned? The guilt gnawed at me even as anger simmered beneath it. Later, back in my quarters, I collapsed onto the bunk, still in uniform, staring at the ceiling until my eyes blurred. The adrenaline from the confrontation had burned away, leaving only exhaustion. But sleep didn't come. Memories did. I remembered my father teaching me to ride a bike, his hand steady on the seat until he let go. I remembered my mother singing in the kitchen, her voice soft over the clatter of dishes. I remembered my sister sneaking into my room at night, whispering secrets under the covers. Those memories collided with the reality of the conference room, the lies, the manipulation, the confession. It was like holding two photographs of the same people, one in color, one in black and white, and realizing they didn't match. At some point, I drifted into a shallow sleep. I dreamed of walking through a house with no doors, every hallway leading back to the same room, my family waiting inside with smiles that never reached their eyes. When I woke, the sun was rising, pale light bleeding through the blinds. My uniform was wrinkled, my throat dry, but I forced myself up. There was still duty. There was always duty. In the mess hall, sailors laughed over trays of eggs and coffee, their voices bright. I sat alone, picking at my food, and wondered if they saw me differently now. Did they know I had just severed ties with the people who made me? Did they know the price of evidence and truth? Chief joined me halfway through breakfast. She didn't ask if I was okay. She just slid a cup of coffee across the table and said, "You're not broken." I gave her a tired smile. "Feels like I am." "Broken people don't fight," she said simply. "They surrender. You didn't." The words didn't erase the ache, but they anchored me, reminded me that survival was its own kind of victory. By afternoon, the paperwork began again, statements, signatures, reports. Every page pulled me further from the life I had known, closer to a future I hadn't yet imagined. That evening, alone in my room, I took out the folder one last time. I flipped through the screenshots, the transcripts, the confessions. Evidence, cold and solid. Proof that I hadn't imagined it, proof that the betrayal was real. At the back of the folder, tucked away, was a childhood photo. The four of us smiling at the beach, my sister's arms slung around my shoulder, our faces bright with sun. I stared at it for a long time, the edges worn soft with years. Finally, I closed the folder and set it aside. The past was evidence, too, but not all evidence was useful. That night, for the first time in weeks, I turned off my phone before bed. The silence that followed wasn't empty this time. It was mine. The days after the confrontation blurred into one another, a steady rhythm of paperwork, duty shifts, and restless nights. Outwardly, everything was normal. I showed up in uniform, saluted, carried out my responsibilities. Inside, I felt hollow, like someone had scooped out my center and left only a shell. People noticed the change but didn't ask. Maybe they thought I was just tired from long hours. Maybe they sensed that questions would open something they weren't ready to see. Either way, I carried the silence like armor. The JAG team kept me updated in briefings, but the words slipped past me like static. Legal terms, protective measures, investigations. I nodded, signed where they asked me to sign, but it all felt distant, like I was watching someone else's life being processed through official channels. At night, when the bass quieted and the ocean wind pressed against the windows, the emptiness returned. It wasn't fear anymore. It was grief. I grieved the family I thought I had, the version of them that existed only in memory. The father who steadied the bike seat, the mother who sang, the sister who whispered secrets in the dark. I knew now those moments had been tangled with manipulation, but the warmth inside them was real to me. Losing that warmth felt like losing a piece of myself. One evening, I walked to the edge of the pier, the sea stretching endless before me. I leaned on the railing, the salt air sharp in my lungs, and whispered into the wind, "What am I without them?" The waves didn't answer, but something inside me did. I was still Maria. I was still the sailor who had pushed through training, the woman who had stood in uniform before commanders, the one who had walked into that room and faced down blood without flinching. Family had shaped me, yes, but they did not define me. Chief met me the next morning during PT. She didn't mention the case, didn't mention my family. She just jogged beside me, her pace steady, her breathing even. After a mile, she said, "You're carrying too much weight on your back." I thought she meant the rucksack, but when I looked at her, I saw she wasn't talking about gear. I let out a laugh that sounded more like a cough. I don't know how to set it down. Her reply was simple. One step at a time. That night I tried. I took out the photo I had tucked in the folder, the four of us at the beach, sunburned and smiling. For a long time I stared at it, my throat tight. Then I slid it into an envelope and sealed it. I didn't throw it away. Not yet. But I put it in the back of my drawer, out of sight. The next day, I caught myself laughing at something one of the sailors said in the mess hall. The sound startled me. It had been weeks since laughter came without effort, weeks since I felt anything other than tension. The moment was small, but it was real. Later, in my room, I wrote in my journal for the first time since everything began. The words were shaky at first, but once the pen started moving, they poured out. I wrote about the dinner, the juice, the messages, the confrontation. I wrote about the hollow and the grief. And I wrote about the pier, about realizing that even without them, I was still me. By the time I set the pen down, my hand ached, but my chest felt lighter. I didn't know what the future held, whether my family would face prison, whether they would try again, whether their names would always be a shadow at my back. But I knew this, I had survived the worst of them. And survival wasn't the end. It was the beginning. That night, as I turned off the light, I whispered one more thing into the dark. I don't belong to you. The silence that followed was no longer empty. It was freedom. The first morning I woke without dread felt strange, almost unnatural. Sunlight filtered through the blinds, soft and unassuming. For weeks I had trained myself to wake braced for another message, another demand, another guilt-laden voicemail. But the phone on my nightstand sat silent. The silence was not empty anymore. It was possibility. I got up slowly, stretched, and caught my reflection in the mirror above the sink. My eyes looked tired, but there was a steadiness in them I hadn't seen before. A kind of resilience that had been forged in confrontation and sharpened by truth. Chief found me later in the mess hall. She sat down across from me without asking, her tray clattering lightly against the table. She studied me for a moment, then said, "You're different." I raised an eyebrow. Different how? Not weighed down. Lighter. I shrugged, poking at my eggs with a fork. Lighter doesn't mean fixed. She gave a small smile. It doesn't have to. Healing isn't a sprint, it's a march. Her words lingered with me throughout the day as I moved between duty assignments. I realized she was right. I wasn't fixed. I still carried memories like stones in my pockets, still felt the sting when I thought of my sister's calm confession. But the weight no longer kept me pinned. I could move forward, even if slowly. That evening, I walked down to the pier again. The sea stretched wide and endless, the horizon bleeding into the sky. I leaned against the railing, the wood cool beneath my palms, and breathed in the salt air. For so long, I had believed freedom meant safety. Now I understood it meant choice, and choice meant risk. I pulled a small notebook from my pocket, the same one I had used to spill out my thoughts a week before. This time, I wrote about the future. Not about evidence or betrayal, but about what I wanted. I wrote that I wanted to travel, to see places I had only glimpsed in training exercises. I wrote that I wanted to build friendships that weren't bound by blood but by trust. I wrote that I wanted to keep serving, not because I had to prove anything, but because the uniform had become mine, separate from the family who tried to claim it. Halfway through, my hand froze. The page blurred with tears I hadn't expected. They weren't the heavy, choking tears of grief. They were lighter, like rain washing away dust. I let them fall, then wiped my cheeks with the back of my sleeve and kept writing. When the sun dipped low, painting the sky in streaks of orange and gold, I closed the notebook and tucked it back into my pocket. For the first time, I felt the horizon call to me, not as an escape, but as a direction. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought of my family, not with anger, not with fear, with acceptance. They were part of my story, but they no longer held the pen. I whispered into the dark, not to them, but to myself, "You're free," and this time I believed it. The weeks that followed unfolded like the slow turning of a page. Nothing dramatic, nothing sudden, just steady movement away from the storm. The Navy carried on with its routines: drills at dawn, briefings in windowless rooms, inspections that left no corner unchecked. Around me, life felt normal, even mundane. Inside me, the world had shifted forever. I no longer checked my phone with dread. The silence from my family was louder than any message, but it was a silence I had chosen. Every day that passed without their voices felt like a day reclaimed. Still, ghosts lingered. Sometimes in the middle of chow, I would hear someone laugh in a way that reminded me of my sister. Sometimes I caught myself reaching for my phone to share a joke with my mother before remembering there was no before to return to. At first, those moments gutted me. They felt like fresh cuts, but slowly I began to see them differently. They weren't wounds reopening. They were scars reminding me of what I had survived. One evening, Chief invited me to run laps with her on the track. The air was cool, the sky streaked with fading light. We ran in silence for a while, the rhythm of our feet pounding against the asphalt steady and grounding. After 3 laps, she spoke, her voice even. "You've been carrying this with strength, Maria." I gave a small laugh between breaths. "Feels like weakness most of the time." She shook her head. "Weakness would have been silence. Weakness would have been surrender. You didn't do either." Her words stayed with me long after the run ended. For so long I had seen myself as the victim, cornered, manipulated, betrayed. But maybe that wasn't the whole truth. Maybe survival had its own form of strength. That night, I opened my notebook again. Instead of writing about the past, I wrote a list. Not of what I had lost, but of what I wanted. Simple things at first: learn a new language. Visit somewhere that isn't connected to duty. Find a friend I can trust with silence as much as words. The list grew longer than I expected, spilling into the margins. For the first time, I wasn't cataloging evidence. I was cataloging hope. The next day, during Liberty hours, I walked into town. The streets bustled with strangers, their lives unfolding in fragments I could only glimpse: an old man carrying groceries, a child chasing pigeons, a couple laughing over coffee. No one knew my story, no one knew my scars, and in their anonymity I felt something unexpected: freedom. I stopped at a small bookstore tucked between a laundromat and a diner. Inside, the shelves smelled of paper and dust. I wandered until I found a blank journal, its cover a deep navy blue. I bought it without hesitation. That evening, sitting by the pier with the waves lapping against the wood, I opened the new journal and wrote on the first page, "This story belongs to me." The words looked small on the page, but they felt enormous inside me. As the sun dipped low, painting the horizon in fire, I realized that closure wasn't about erasing the past. It was about claiming the future. I stood, the wind tugging at my jacket, and whispered one last time, not to my family, not to Chief, not to anyone else, just to myself: "You are free, you are enough, you are Maria Gilbert." Then I turned away from the sea and walked back toward the lights of the base, toward the life that was waiting for me. And for the first time, the future did not terrify me. It called to me.